Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be going through some last minute exam tips. So if your exam is coming up, these are some ideas that I think you should prioritise your revision on before you dive into that exam. This is specifically aimed at IGCSE for Edexcel Pearson for those of you studying of Mice and Men for your modern prose. So I always start my videos with this because it is the most important thing. What are you assessed on? Okay, so for Of Mice and Men, you are assessed on two things. AO1 means you need to know that book really well and you need to have a perceptive argument. So you need to be able to discuss not necessarily the most obvious things, but actually show that you've really thought deeply about what John Steinbeck's trying to do, the issues in the text, etc. AO4 is your link to context. That doesn't mean just inserting a paragraph from context and going, here's the context of Mice and Men. It means you need to be, for each of your paragraphs, thinking, why did John Steinbeck do this? How can I use context to explain and show that I've really considered the context in my understanding of this novella? So here are some tips that I think are going to be really important if you're coming up to the exam. This is how you should prioritize your revision. So, firstly, tip number one for AO1, you must know the text well. Okay, this means that you need to know kind of the order of events, you need to know each character, and you need to know the general themes in the book. Now, you need to be able to write in detail about both characters and themes. Now, if the exam is a long way away, you can read the book again, you can watch the movie. If the exam is coming up in a short amount of time, my best advice is to read a summary. And I've linked a BBC Bite-size one in the comments below, in the description. I also recommend, I've got videos on almost all the characters and themes in my Mice and Men playlist. So I recommend you watch them. They should help you both with AO1, but I've also tried to link to context in them as well. So that's number one. You need to know the text well. Okay. Now, here are what some past paper questions look like. Okay. So take a moment to have a look at this. These are all past Edexcel questions. And you'll see that the ones in yellow are all to do with theme and the ones in white are all to do with character. So that tends to be almost always what you get. You'll get one question which is to do with a character and one which is to do it with a theme, and you answer just one. Okay, so you need to be prepared that sometimes I might throw a kind of a curveball at you. For example, examine the significance of the locations used in the novel. That one might be one you weren't expecting, but just make sure that you're prepared to answer at least one of those questions when the exam comes. So you need to know all the characters well and consider themes such as animals, loneliness, companionship, even location, as you can see. Now, my second tip, as you can see, we've talked about AO1. The other thing is AO4. You must know the context. If you're going to be able to link to it effectively throughout your essay, you need to know what it is. So again, if you're kind of running last minute, I've linked some free resources down the bottom where you can find out about context. I'm sure there are other resources on YouTube as well that will be helpful. As I said, I've also put links to context in my videos, but just make sure whatever you're doing, you know the context well and you know how to link to it. Number three, I suggest you practice planning some of your answers in time conditions. So in the exam, you're going to have about 45 minutes to answer the question and really no more than 10 minutes to plan your answers. Okay, so what I think would be really powerful revision is take some of the questions on the previous image and actually plan, okay, in 10 minutes, we're going to set a timer. Let me get all my ideas down. Now, this is how I recommend planning. First of all, for me, a mind map works. It might be a bullet point list for you. It might be, I don't know, an image, whatever works for you. But what I suggest you do is a bit of a brain dump first. You're running on adrenaline in an exam. You're also going to be a little bit tired probably by the time you get to this question because you'll have done a question on unseen poetry and anthology poetry. So you'll kind of be a mixture of like adrenaline, but also a little bit tired. So the first thing I suggest is just choose your question and then do kind of a brain dump. Get down all the ideas you can think of to do with that question on the page. Once you've got those ideas, then just number them 1, 2, 3. What are your 3 best ideas? Maybe you can incorporate some of them together into kind of underneath the same point. Put together what your 3 main points for your 3 body paragraphs of your essay are going to be. All right. And obviously, you want to write about the one that you're most confident with first, because that's going to be, front loading your essay. And then if you're slightly running out of time and you have to rush the last one, at least you've already got your best ideas down. Now, linking to that, let me go through how I suggest you structure your essay. Okay. So as I said, you've got 45 minutes. So you need a brief introduction. Now that introduction doesn't need to be long, but it does need to be smart. So in that introduction, you need to make sure that you've explained your overall argument, because that is AO1. You're showing that you've got a deep understanding of the text, and you know you've got a perceptive argument, you've got a perceptive understanding, if we quote the mark scheme. And you also need to link it to context, because then that examiner is going to read your essay and go, okay, this student knows exactly what they're doing. They know the requirements of this task, and they have shown me, even in the introduction, that they're able to deliver on these expectations. Okay, so it will put you in good stead with the examiner. It will also just provide a really strong, confident start to your essay. Then you need 3 to 4 detailed body paragraphs. Now, ideally, personally, I'm quite a slow writer. If I was taking this exam, it would probably be 3, but I would make sure that those 3 are incredibly detailed. Okay, so in each of those paragraphs, you must have a very clear point that links to your overall argument. You must then explain your reasoning clearly, and very importantly, you must link to context. So what I suggest you do is, at the end of each paragraph, just pause very briefly and ask yourself, why did John Steinbeck do this? Could I add one more sentence to really explain why he actually did this in this way? And make sure that you are linking to context in each paragraph. What the examiners don't like, and they've said this in their examiners' reports, they don't like it when students go, here's a paragraph about this character, here's a paragraph of this character, here's a paragraph about context, because that's not linking your argument. That's just going, almost word vomiting a bunch of context. That's not what they want. They want you to be linking it clearly throughout your essay. Your conclusion then can recap your overall arguments and also John Steinbeck's author's intentions. I've got a whole video specifically on how to write an introduction. If you have a look at the Of Mice and Men playlist, you'll be able to find that. And then obviously you'll be able to find more information for your paragraphs, etc. in my other videos or your other revision resources. So some final tips, because I know for some of you the exam is coming up very shortly. Are you allowed to take the text into the exam? For Edexcel, Pearson, IGCSE, no, you are not. Okay, you will not have the text with you. Do I need to learn quotes? Not necessarily. Okay, now you might be surprised at this. Okay, lots of students are surprised by this. Obviously, if you know quotes, that's amazing. All right, that's brilliant. And that's going to just make your essay flow. However, they're not actually assessing your analysis of quotes. All right, and again, this is from the examiner's report. They have said you do not need to learn the quotes. You just need to be able to reference where something had happened in the text. So if you're thinking, oh, I could describe how, when Lenny and George are introduced, Lenny is following George. Lenny is following George, and that introduces George as the leader and Lenny as the follower, and this dynamic between them. If you can't think of a quote or exactly remember it, don't worry about it. Don't make it up. Just say, Steinbeck, when he first introduces George and Lenny, describes how Lenny is following George, and this shows that, and this portrays that, and I think this is exciting or interesting or relevant because, all right, your argument is more important than knowing the quotes. So if you are last minute now and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do, I would say, please follow my advice on the previous slides. That is going to gain you more marks than sitting down and trying to fill your brain with quotes at this point. If you've already learned the quotes, it's not a waste of time. That's just going to make you feel more confident in what you're writing. It's going to help it flow. So it's a win, either way, if you've learned them already or if you haven't. Do I need to analyse language? No, you do not. For this exam, you've just analysed language for unseen poetry. You've just analysed language for the anthology poetry. You do not have to do that for the Of Mice and Men question. More final tips. Make sure you time yourself carefully. All right. If you've timed yourself well for the first 2 questions, you should have 45 minutes left for this one. Okay. So I would suggest plan for no more than 10 minutes, but your plan's important because that's where your overarching argument will come in. Write for 30 minutes. You're going to have to write fast. You may get extra time. Obviously, just adjust these timings if you are allowed extra time. And then leave a bit of time to check your answer for 5 minutes at the end. This is just to make sure your overall argument and communication is really, really clear. Okay, remember you can always add an asterisk to the text or like put a little arrow to show that you want to add. If you want to add an extra sentence to add a bit more explanation, you can do that. Okay. Focus on the 2 assessment objectives. That is my almost last piece of advice. Okay. There is no point analysing language because you're not going to get marks for that. Keep your argument very clear. Make sure you're being perceptive in what you're saying. And of course, make sure you're linking to context. And then lastly, if you're feeling panicked, if you're feeling nervous, both now when you're revising and in the exam, just take a deep breath. Okay, you've got knowledge in your brain. It's there. There's a very, very subtle change in your brain between excitement and nerves. All right. So, one of the biggest differences between feeling nerves and excitement is actually the breathing that you do. So, you can trick your body, take a deep breath, even if you take just 30 seconds to close your eyes, take some really slow breaths. Okay. Remind your body you're calm, you're in control, you've got this. All right. You don't need to panic. You are here to prove what you can do to that examiner. Last of all, thank you so much for all the love on my recent videos and TikToks. I have loved seeing, your comments. It brings me genuinely so much joy to know that you're finding these videos helpful. And what would bring me even more joy would be let me know how you did in the exam. When you take the exam, just come back and let me know comment on one of my videos and tell me, which question you chose, how you did, how you feel it went. I would honestly love to hear because, it makes me really happy to know that lots of you are finding these helpful for getting you through the exam. I know for some of you, the exam is going to be very, very soon. If so, drop a comment or if you've got any last minute questions, and I'll be checking over the next 24 hours to answer you. All the best, everyone. You've got this. I believe in you, and take care.